Ladies and gentlemen, as we begin our services, if we can please kindly turn off all cell phones or electronic devices, or please place them on silent. Thank you.
לכל זמן ועת לכל חפץ תחת השמיים. There is a season set for everything, and a time for every purpose under heaven. There's a time to plant, and a time to reap, a time to keep, and a time to discard. There's a time for loving, and a time for hating, a time for embracing, and a time for refraining. There's a time to laugh and a time to cry, a time to dance and a time to wail. There's a time to be born and a time to die. There's a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time to seek and a time to lose. Today we are joined together to remember, to honor with great love Stephen Scarduzio, Zalman Ber Ben Avram B'Flemachana. Adonai Madam V'Teidohehu Ben Enosh V'Tichashvehu Adam Lev Adam Hayamav Kitzel Overa Siram Tamashena Yihiyu Baboker Kechatzir Yachalov Baboker Yatzitz V'Chalaf Le'erev Yimalel V'Yavesh Yemei Shnoteinu Vayim Shivim Shana Vim Bigvurot Shmonihim Shana V'Rabam Amo V'Evan Ki Gazchish V'Na'ufa Limnot Yahameinu Kein Hodav Navi Levav Chachma Shmar Tamre Yashar Ki Charit Le'ish Shalom Ach Elohim Yifteh Nashri Miyad She'o Ki Yikacheni Selah Podeh Adonai Nefesh Avada V'lo Yeshmu Kol HaChosim Bo V'yashav Afar Al Haaretz K'shehaya V'ruach Tashuv El Ha'elohim Asher Nitana. O Lord, what is mankind that you regard us, or the children of mankind that you think of us? We are like a breath. Our days are like a passing shadow. We are swept away like a dream, like grass which is renewed in the morning. In the morning it flourishes and is renewed. In the evening it fades and withers. Our years are but pride and toil and trouble. They are soon gone and we fly away. So teach us, therefore, to number our days that we may get us a heart of wisdom. Mark the blameless and behold the upright, for there's posterity for those who seek peace. Surely God will ransom my soul from the grave, for he will receive me indeed. The Lord redeems the souls of his servants. None of those who take refuge in him will be condemned. The dust returns to the earth as it was, but the neshama, the soul, returns to God who gave it. Our tradition teaches that we recite Tehillim, Psalms, at a service such as this. And in this service, tradition is to recite Psalm 23. So I believe that one of the lessons of the Psalms, and the reason that our sages chose Psalms to be recited, is that King David, who wrote these Psalms, suffered more, I'm going to use a Yiddish word here, tsuris, all right, troubles, challenges in his life, than any of our biblical leaders. He was constantly at war. King Saul, the first king of Israel, tried to kill him. He saw his best friend Jonathan killed in battle. He saw two of his children die, one at a very young at 30 days, and one also in battle. And yet, through all these troubles, instead of saying, there is no God, and turning away from God, instead he turns to God and writes the beautiful words that we recite in this day over 3,000 years later. So I'll chant Psalm 23 first in the Hebrew. If you know the English, please join with me in the English of the 23rd Psalm. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar binotesha yar bitzeni, amei menuchot yinahaleni, nafshi yeshovev yancheni, b'maglei tzedek leman shemo, gam ki elech begeit salmovet lo irara, ki ata imadi shiftecha mishantecha, hema yenachamuni. Taroch lefonai shulchan neged sorerai, deshan tav Hashem en roshi kosi rivaya, ach tov chesed irdefuni koyemei chayai, v'shavti v'veit Adonai, leorech yamim. Psalm 23, a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. As I was sitting in the family room, and some family members were there and just amazed at how many people came out to honor Stephen today. And I want to start our words about Stephen with this. They shouldn't have been amazed, because in our text, our oral tradition, and a text called Pirkei Avot, Ethics of the Fathers, the question is asked, Eze mechubad, who is honored? Hamechabed et habriot. The answer, one who honors, loves, and cares for other human beings. And that's what defines Stephen's life, as you'll hear through the words of the people who are going to be coming up to speak. That would define his life, how he cared and loved other human beings. So before I share my thoughts with you, I'd like to call on a few people. First, Todd, one of Stephen's good friends. Todd, if you could come up.
I'm going to refer to my dear friend of 40 years as Scars. That's how I knew him. That's how many of us knew him. And it's a fitting moniker today, because the scars run deep for all of us who knew and loved and cherished his friendship. 51 years ago, he was dealt a deck of cards. It wasn't the best deck, but in the game of life, you have one deck of cards. And he lived with what was dealt him. The battles he endured, health issues, but he made the best of it. He never had the opportunity to get married and have kids. And we know what an amazing father he would have been, what an amazing husband he would have made. But instead, he was the best son, best brother, best friend any of us could have. So the memories, as I was thinking about what I would say, started flowing like a faucet. Good memories. You know, using the deck of cards as sort of an example, so many of my memories with Scars surrounded a deck of cards, honestly. We used to play cards in high school till all hours of the night, come in late, go to the casino, dress up like we were 21 when we were 17, get kicked out of one casino and go to the next. Matt knows all these stories. Lose money, and then have to deliver pizza the next morning. So we'd come in at 5 a.m., have to get up 5 hours later, get ready for the noon shift. And we used to joke around because a small pizza back in those days was $6.10. And a large pizza was $8.40. So Scars and I would always battle on who's up next to get the large. Because if you got the large pizza, chances are you're going to get a tip that rounded up. There'd be $1.60. But if we were unfortunate to get the small pizza, you'd probably get the 90-cent tip. And we always joked around because after losing a couple $100 at the casino, oh, great, I have 90 cents. That's really going to help. But we've been through it all, and it's so touching to see not just his dear friends, but other friends from high school come out. We were joking around, in truth, actually, that Scars was the unifying force for all of us. He so much wanted a reunion, always pressed for it, and he got one, and he doesn't know. But we're all here for him. The list of attributes is long. He was fun and funny. When he came out of his shell, he had the best personality. You couldn't possibly be in his presence without feeling enriched, without taking away something. And I think one of his best attributes was his selflessness and his caring. And there's no doubt he got it from you guys. The Scarduzio family is among the most genuine, caring, and loving people I've ever met. And we will stay in touch, I promise you that. His heart, while literally probably the smallest in the room, and that's coming from me, I'm not exactly Joel Embiid, but figuratively, his heart was the biggest. It always was. And as I relate it to me and my stories and my own family, everything comes to Scars. And the way he dealt with me and my family exemplified that big heart that he had till the end. He played a role in my meeting my wife. He was with me when I got married. So supportive of my kids. And I can't help but reminisce because 13 years ago, tomorrow, Martin Luther King Day, I stood in this very spot and unfortunately had to eulogize my baby daughter who didn't last. She died at 3 days old. And Scars was so caring in my time of need, not just when it happened, over the years. How you doing, Shoni? I know it's a tough time for you. I take some comfort in the fact that he's probably looking out for her in heaven now. He's going to regale her with our stories, tell her how much fun he had with her dad. Most recently, my son got bar mitzvahed 2 months ago. And that was a testament to Scars' big heart and his will and his selflessness, because he had no business going to the service. He wasn't looking well, he wasn't feeling well. But it was important for him. He knew it was important to me, and he knew it was important to Judaism, which he found and devoted himself to in a really serious way in the latter years of his life. He couldn't attend the party at night. And well, I didn't fully appreciate it at the time. I certainly do now, and I certainly have in the weeks that followed, how important it would have been for him to be there, and he just couldn't make it. So he's at the party in spirit, and he sent me the kindest text messages after to show his love and support and appreciation and compliments for how my son Max did and services. So I think the takeaway is we could take away one thing from Scars' life and how he impacted nearly all of us. I'm certainly going to live by this, and I invite you all to do the same as a takeaway. Whenever life is crappy and we have one of those days that just sucks, whether you're in an argument with a spouse, a child, money's tight, you're having trouble at work, keep it in perspective, because somebody always has it worse than you. And Scars did not complain. He lived that deck of cards to the fullest. And in the end, although he lost, he was a winner in my book. And he was the royal flush for all of us. We love you, Scars. And we'll never forget you, buddy.
Thank you. This time I'd like to call on Matt, who will share a few words.
Steve and I too, never refer to him as Steve. To me, he's Scars. Our paths crossed in high school in 1989 through our mutual friend Todd, who just spoke so beautifully. Todd had talked to each of us about the other so often that we were eager to finally meet. A group of us went to see a movie, and Scars and I sat next to each other. True to his character, we spoke before the movie, we spoke during the movie, we spoke after the movie. From that day on, we became inseparable best friends. In high school, we dedicated much of our time to pursuing girls, going to Phillies games, countless meals at Ponzio's and the Diamond Diner, socializing in Margate and Atlantic City, where we may or may not have engaged in some underage gambling. And we invested endless hours on the phone with these long conversations, divulging our innermost secrets and plotting our futures. When you're that age, it seems like you have all the time in the world. Gina said that she wants to hear some classic Scars stories. I have so many to choose from, some of which are even appropriate for a public setting. So here are a few of mine. During Scars' college years at Penn State, he dated a friend of mine who attended Pitt. So one weekend, I drove from Philly to Penn State, and then we drove from Penn State to Pitt. And it was during this road trip while I was driving that Scars looked at me and screamed, "You and Todd are the most offensive drivers I've ever met." To which I replied, "Thank you." And then he reminded me that you are supposed to drive defensively. We continued saying that line for decades to come. We were roommates for 2 years during our 20s, and one time my car was in the shop getting repaired, and they gave me a rental car. About 10 o'clock that night, we were just sitting around watching TV when Scars turned to me and said the question that we'd ask one another hundreds of times, "You want to go down?" I knew exactly what that meant. We took the rental car and we headed to Atlantic City. We played blackjack as usual, but what was quite unusual was that I could not win and Scars could not lose. It was the two of us sitting at a table with a woman and this humongous Texan man. I mean, he must have weighed 400 pounds, and he was commanding the table. He was throwing money around. He would add money to our bets. He said that if we won, it was a gift from him. The money he kept adding was getting larger and larger. I put down a $25 bet. He'd throw $100 on top of it. Well, during one hand, we all had good hands except for the woman. She had a 14. And the Texan turned to the dealer, pointed to the woman, and just went, "Give that man a 7." She looked nothing like a man. But none of us had the guts to try and correct him. On the way home that night, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, it suddenly dawned on me, I have been driving this rental car a lot. And I have not once put in gas. That very second, boom, we run out of gas. But as luck would have it, within 5 minutes, a taxi cab pulls over, and this guy says, "You guys okay?" We hired him to take us to find a gas station. Scars was in such a great mood because he had won big. He had that taxi driver laughing hysterically. It was like they were long-lost friends. We eventually find a gas station, and the attendant is fast asleep in a chair. We honk. He doesn't wake up. I said, "I've got an idea." We take the driver's gas can, we fill it up, and Scars says, "Let's fill up the taxi too." So we fill this guy's car up with gas. We take off. He drives us back to the Atlantic City Expressway in our rental car, and by that time, the meter was over $200 for a taxi ride. He turned it off, and he looked at us and was like, "You guys are so much fun. I'm not going to charge you anything." My friend Scars took $100 from his winnings and said, "You take that and have a good meal with your family." During another visit to Atlantic City, we took a seat at a blackjack table besides a guy that had a stack of chips up to here. Never seen anything like it. We start talking to him, and he says, "I'm up $15,000. Scars turns to him and goes, "$15,000? You should quit." The blood drained from that guy's face. That is never something that you say to a gambler. And from that point on, we watched this guy give back the entire $15,000 to the point where he reached in his wallet to get out more money. During the millennium, I resided in a high-rise in Center City, and I had a dog named Iverson. One day, when my friend Scars was visiting, he accompanied me as I took Iverson out for a walk. As we were exiting the lobby of my building, a woman walked in with her 2 young children, and she pointed to my dog, and she went, "That dog's name is Alan." Scars laughed so hard because his name isn't Alan, it's Iverson. And for the rest of our lives, whenever we would see a dog, he would turn to me and go, "This dog's name is Alan." On a more serious note, just under 6 months ago, my girlfriend Corey and I experienced a devastating accident in Las Vegas. The possibility of having my leg amputated was all too real. As news of the accident spread, I received countless messages from people, mostly via text or on Facebook. I checked, and among them, there are no texts from Scars, and that is because he reached out by phone again and again and again while I was in Vegas, once I got home. When I was finally able to return home, he was one of the first to come and visit, and he insisted that I call on him if I needed help. I wound up taking him up on his offer one day when I needed to get to physical therapy and nobody was around to drive me. It was quite a sight. With his difficulty breathing and my struggle walking, it was like the blind leading the blind. And on our way back, we stopped for breakfast, of course, at Ponzio's, a place where we'd frequented so many times over the span of 35 years. It turned out to be our last meal together, making it a most fitting venue for an unexpected farewell. I'm very passionate about music, and Scars and I have dedicated countless hours to listening to music and discussing it together. I'm proud that I've introduced him to a lot of the music of Bruce Springsteen and Billy Joel, Ziggy Marley, Mattis Yahoo, the Grateful Dead, and we would engage in deep conversations about it. As I bid you farewell this morning, I want to leave you with lyrics from a band that held a lot of significance for him, Switchfoot. Tell me this doesn't sound just like Scars. Until I die, I'll sing these songs on the shores of Babylon. I'm still looking for a home in a world where I belong, where the weak are finally strong, where the righteous right the wrongs. I'm still looking for a home in a world where I belong. I don't claim to know where my friend Scars is now, but Scars, you will always have a place in my heart and my mind, which is exactly where you belong. Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call on Stephen's cousin, Scott. Nope. Was that? We're good? Okay. Michael. Okay. I was told that might be tentative. Okay. I heard you had some challenges. Glad you made it in.
Steve was my cousin, and I'm gonna try to get through this. He was quite a bit older than I was, and we lived in Kansas City, so we really only saw him a handful of times, and didn't get a chance to really get to know him until I grew up. We come out as kids quite a bit, but it was around college that we started interacting a little bit more. So he's about 10 years older than I am. And with the advent of Facebook and cell phones and text messages, we were able to connect quite a bit more. And our friendship really grew at that point, and we became pretty good friends, just beyond being family related, of course. But our bond was really around baseball. We were both pretty diehard Phillies fans, and we'd text each other quite a bit about games and watch. I'd watch in Kansas City while he's watching out here. But our bond continued to grew during that time, and there was an opportunity that I had between jobs, and I'll never forget this trip. That I had about 2 weeks, 3 weeks of just time off. I had nothing to do at the point, and decided to come out here and see my aunt and uncle and try to figure out, how to coordinate this. Just out of college, didn't have a whole lot of money. Steve opened his home to me. He had an apartment at the time, and said, "Come stay with me." And we really didn't know each other that well at all. But it's a testament to Steve that he's, as the other guys have already talked about, he's just such a caring and loving guy. And yes, I'm family, but it was more than that. He just opened his home to me, and at the time, my girlfriend, now my wife, came with me, and she got to know him as well during that trip. And that was really, I think, the trip where Steve and I became really good friends and bonded because of the time that we had together. And I don't have a whole lot to say more than what's already been talked about Steve as a person, but I did want to share a scripture that, as I was thinking about Steve and around just his struggles and his health and his sicknesses, and we had a chance. I actually brought my kids out recently, and we had a chance to visit with family, and I knew Steve wasn't doing well because I couldn't actually see him when I was here. And I knew that he had really wanted to see my kids. We talk about it all the time. We text back and forth. He's always asking about how my kids are doing. So when we came out and he wasn't well enough to see them, I knew that he was really struggling. And I follow him on Facebook, and he's always sharing scriptures or thoughts. And this scripture was something that just popped up, and I thought it was really fitting, so I wanted to share it. In Psalm 16:5, Adonai, my assigned portion, my cup, you safeguard my share. Pleasant places were measured out for me. It's all right, can't see through the tears. I bless Adonai, my counselor. At night, my inmost being instructs me. I always set Adonai before me. With him at my right hand, I can never be moved. So my heart is glad, my glory rejoices, and my body too rests in safety. For you will not abandon me in Sheol. You will not let your faithful see the abyss. You make me know the path of life. In your presence is unbounded joy. In your right hand, eternal delight. We love you, Steve.
my dear rabbi of blessed memory would say that when family and friends speak like a rabbi, there's no reason for a rabbi to speak. The beautiful words you just heard are more powerful, I think, than almost anything I can share with you. But having met with the family last night and knowing the Gellers for over 25 years, yes, it's been that long, there are some things that I would like to share with you. Gina had some memories that were very powerful for her and wanted to make sure that you knew. She remembers as a child visiting Children's Hospital when Stephen was there. And they were close, and that's not always easy when you have a younger sibling who's a boy, an older sibling that's a girl. It's not always the easiest relationship, but they had a great relationship. They would compete with each other in sports, and it didn't matter what the sport was, especially baseball, though. And they played on a baseball team, Little League team together. Is that the way I heard? We were at the same time. And Stephen was selected for the All-Star team, and Gina was not. But she supported him, and she loved him, and was so pleased to see him get that kind of recognition. When he was on travel soccer team, she remembers going to the games. They were on Sunday mostly, and while she was watching Stephen play, she'd be listening to the Eagles games, which was fine by Stephen because he was such a great Eagles fan. She remembers his amazing sense of humor, and I don't mean the ability to tell jokes, although he did that too, but the ability to sort of laugh at himself. Even with his challenges, he just took it in stride. As Todd so beautifully put it, he was given a deck of cards and he played every hand all the way to the end. He would do imitations, family, friends, famous people, coaches, some of whom I understand are here today. And to that end, he lost kidney function when he was in high school and had to get dialysis treatment. And he would go to class, and the nurse had the equipment to give him treatment. And with all that, he tried out for the baseball team. And with a little prodding and pushing and encouraging, he made the baseball team. Played so well that at the end of his senior year of baseball at the banquet, he received the Most Courageous Athlete Award from Cherry Hill East. I don't think that surprises anyone here who didn't know that. He started his college career at University of Delaware, transferred to Penn State University, and eventually got his degree in economics from Rutgers, which he never really used. He was working with his dad at the real estate, as a real estate appraiser. He loved the Phillies, he loved the Eagles, and as you heard already, he not only made friends, but he stayed friends with all the people that he embraced. Stephen had a spiritual journey that he took and tried many different spiritual paths. But something that occurred at Haley's bat mitzvah, where he was asked to carry the Torah scroll for the Torah service. And I would like to think from that point on, not only did he carry the Torah scroll, but the Torah began to carry him. And he found his spiritual path in a traditional Judaism that I don't think even he would have imagined. He actually had a sweatshirt with this quote, which I love, and I'm going to steal and use. Torah isn't religion, it's reality. It became his reality. Shabbat, the Sabbath day, became a reality for him. He observed it, he kept it, he studied, he kept studying Torah, and it became not just a part of him, but it became who he was. He was, as you already heard, the most compassionate, loving, giving, and selfless person. And in addition to the takeaway that his friends shared with you this morning, I would like to share this takeaway with you. There are so many of us who have a fairly comfortable life, whether it's financially, whether it's physically, medically. We live fairly comfortable lives, and some of us are, shall we say, I'll use the Yiddish term and then I'll try and translate it, a little verbissener, bitter. We look at the world as glass half empty. Stephen, with all his challenges, looked at his glass not just half full, but full. He filled every day with precious moments that you can all share with each other, some of which were shared this morning. And I think that's the lesson of his life. He turned his eyes, instead of focusing on the challenges that he was facing each and every day, and he turned them to the people in his life, the people that he loved. And if he didn't know you, he got to know you and loved you. And he looked at this world in the most positive and loving way. So I think that's the lesson we can learn. Maybe the challenges that we're facing, maybe they're real challenges. They are. But if we face them with joy, if we face them with love, and if we face them taking our eyes off ourselves a little bit and being part of someone else's life, those challenges can be overcome and maybe just a little smaller in our lives. If you don't know the term gita neshama, a good soul, which really doesn't translate well, but a gita neshama is one who just from the very core of his being gives love to others and is kind. That's Stephen. Scars. A gita neshama, a good soul, a decent, loving, wonderful human being who embraced everything that he could and everyone that he could. Zichrono livracha, may his memory be for a blessing, and may we leave this place better for having known him and living as he would have wanted us to live. Adonai Natan, v'Adonai lakach, Yishem, Adonai mivorach. The Lord has given, and the Lord has taken. Praise be God's name. Ben Sirah. Some say he was a nephew. Some say he was a grandson of the prophet Isaiah. His words never made it into the big book. But I would like to share these thoughts with you before we recite the memorial prayer. He says, we are all destined to die. We share it with all who ever lived, with all who ever will be. Cry for the dead. Hide not your grief. Do not restrain your mourning. But remember that continuing sorrow is worse than death. When the dead are at rest, let their memory be a source of peace, and be consoled when the soul departs. Death is better than a life of pain, and eternal rest is better than constant sickness. Let us not seek to understand what is too difficult for us, nor search for what is hidden, nor be preoccupied with what is beyond, for we have been shown more than we can comprehend. As a drop of water in the sea, as a grain of sand on the shore are our few days in eternity. The good things in life last for a short time, but a good name, a good reputation, endures forever. Let us live and understand Stephen's good reputation. At this time, if you are able, please stand as we recite the memorial prayer, the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim Shochein Bameromim Hamitzei Menucha Nechona Al Kanfei Ashrina B'malot Kedoshim Utahorim Kezohar Harakia Mahashirim Et Nishmat Reb Zalman Ber Ben Avram V'Flemachana Shalach Liolamo Began Eden Tehei Menuchato Lachain Ba'al Harachamim Hastireu B'Seiter Kanafecha Liolamim Utzror B'Tzorchaim Et Nishmato Adonai Hu Nachalato V'Yanuach B'Shalom HaMishkavo V'Nomar Amen. Exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Stephen Scarduzio, the son of Flory and Jimmy, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful one, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul thus be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us all say, Amen. You may be seated. Interment will follow immediately at Locust Wood Memorial Park. Shiva will be observed at the home of Gina and Kevin, 853 Bergdorf Drive in Ambler, beginning at 1:30 this afternoon. Tomorrow, Monday, 2 to 8 o'clock. Services tonight at 7 o'clock from the Shiva House. If you're unable to make it, there is a Zoom link that you can attend virtually if you'd like to be at the services at 7 o'clock. So once again, that's 1:30 to begin Shiva, and then services at 7 o'clock. Tomorrow will be 2 to 8 o'clock.